Yeah, that's right.
Okay, in recent history, one of the challenges that has faced religion today is militant atheism. Atheism is an old thing, not believing in God or denying God's existence. That's something that's been around for a while. But more recently, in just the recent last decade or so, there's been a movement of atheism that tries to actually assert itself, actively trying to push religion out of public life and argue against the belief in God, and to missionize on behalf of atheism, to try and convince people that there is no God. So while in the past, religion was quite strong, and atheism was an individual thing. If a person, rejected their beliefs and whatever, that's fine. That was their business. But they didn't generally go out and try and sell the idea of atheism. But today, there's a strong movement of militant atheism that is trying to actually push religion out. It's not just saying we don't believe in it. It's saying that we believe it's damaging, it's false, and it has to be eradicated. And so there's been a whole series of books written, such as The God Delusion by Dawkins, and other famous books, all presenting the case of atheism and trying to convince people of atheism. In fact, this year, in April, there was an atheist convention here in Australia, where atheists, big-time atheists from around the world got together and convened, met, discussed, and shared their ideas of trying to bring the world back to its senses. And their argument is generally that we are representing reason and logic, rationale, science, not the backward, superstitious, and anachronistic beliefs of religion.
That's also the first time we have an atheist prime minister.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
And apparently in America too, that it's illegal to teach any kind of religion within a public school system.
Right. And there's hot debates in America about the separation of church and state.
Correct.
And what exactly that means. Freedom of religion or freedom from religion, and it's a big issue. And so atheists are now taking a much more aggressive stance than they ever have in history. And so I think this could be actually a very good thing, because if you look at Jewish history, you see that every time there's been an assault on Judaism, it's resulted in a strengthening of Judaism. Always. That any time there was an attack, whether it be a physical attack or a spiritual or philosophical attack against Judaism, it's always produced more Yiddishkeit, more Torah, more wisdom. I mean, starting from the destruction of the first temple, when the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, so that resulted in a more greater focus on organized Torah study. That while Torah was always studied, but the idea of yeshivas, of Torah study and a more systematic study of Torah, that came more as a result of the challenge of the first temple being destroyed. Because they realized the temple was the center of their being. When the temple was destroyed, people realized that the Torah has to become more the center. And that was even more the case in the second temple. When the second temple was destroyed and the Jewish people started to be dispersed, so Torah study, as we know it, the Talmud, the Mishnah, all of the writings of the oral tradition were written down as a result of the destruction of the temple and the dispersion of the Jewish people. And so there was an explosion of Jewish learning as a result of that attack on Judaism. But then philosophical attacks like the Karaites, the Sadducees, the movements that denied the oral Torah, that is the reason why we have commentaries on the Torah. The idea of writing down a commentary on the Torah came about as a direct response to people attacking the Torah and saying that the oral tradition and the written tradition don't fit together. They're two separate things. So people started writing commentaries showing how the oral tradition and the written Torah go hand in hand, and you can't have one without the other. So we only have the commentaries. We only have the written Mishnah and Talmud and Medrash only because of the attacks on Judaism. And it went on further as well. When the Jewish people in the Middle Ages were living in Muslim countries, so Greek philosophy, like Plato and Aristotle, the big thinkers of Greece, they became very popular, and that became an affront and a challenge to Judaism as well. Rational thinking as opposed to spiritual and mystical thinking. And so there was another explosion of Jewish philosophy, like Maimonides, the Rambam, in his great work Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide to the Perplexed, was as a response to Aristotelian thinking and trying to reconcile logic with the Torah. It only came about because of those challenges. Then the expulsion of the Jewish people from Spain and the persecutions during that time. It was right at that time that the Kabbalah, the mystical side of Judaism, started to really explode. In Tzfat, in Israel, that became a center of Kabbalah, mainly after the expulsion of Jews from Spain, many of whom moved to Israel. And the Arizal and other great Kabbalists were in that exact time, just after the expulsion from Spain. There was this new vision of the world that gave the Jewish people much more hope and a deeper view of reality. And then in more recent times, also the Enlightenment in Europe, the movement also that was trying to bring more rational thinking into people's lives and challenged religion, that brought about a response to that was the Hasidic movement. It arose at that very time. And so another explosion of new Jewish thinking.
Is this the Baal Shem Tov time?
Yeah, and the Baal Shem Tov and his followers. So, not that they're coming to respond to that, but you see a parallel that every time there's a challenge to Judaism, there's a new depth of Torah that's revealed. We go into our own wisdom and find more to stand up to the challenge. So if today the biggest challenge is this militant atheism, so that'll probably result in a deepening of our understanding of our own religion. And so in that way it's a good thing. And the Jewish people have never shied away from challenges. If somebody comes with a question against Judaism, so we analyze it, we take it seriously, and we look for an answer. You can only do that when you have real faith in your beliefs. Like if you really believe in it, so then there'll be an answer. If you're not sure, if you're a bit shaky in your faith, so then when somebody asks you a question, you fall apart, and so you have to shut them up. But if you really believe that there's truth behind what you believe, so then any question that comes up, there'll be an answer. And if I don't get it today, maybe tomorrow, maybe it'll take time. But we're not scared to delve into these things.
Would you say the birth of Chabad was also at similar timing to World War II?
Well, Chabad was earlier than that. Chabad was towards the beginning of the Hasidic movement, but definitely the spreading of it was after World War II, and the Rebbe's whole mission, that definitely. And so, yeah, Yiddishkeit reaching those furthest reaches where it had been weakened, that's definitely true. So what I want to do is have a look at some of the specific challenges that atheists level against believers, the questions that they ask, and see what we would respond to these questions. The atheists today are coming up with barbed attacks and questions that they're expecting us not to be able to answer, to try and disprove religion and God and our beliefs. And so, even though most of their attacks are against Christianity, and therefore a lot of their attacks are not relevant to us at all, because Christian beliefs are different to our beliefs, and so we don't have to answer necessarily those ones, but the ones that are relevant to us or can be applied to us, we should look at. So I've got a few of them here that I thought we could take a look and see if we'd be able to answer. The first question here is, why are you a Jew and not a Christian or Hindu or Muslim or whatever? In other words, and what's behind this question? There are thousands of different religions and gods out there to choose from. Do you believe the way you do because of your parents and upbringing? And that's it? Meaning, if your faith is so strong, but is that just because you were born in that religion? Or what makes yours true and theirs not? And one of the things that a lot of them argue about, or one of their arguments is, that whatever you say about the other religion being not true, I say that about yours. This is one of the sort of the challenges they say, that you believe your religion is true and others are not. So whatever you say about them, I say about you. How are you going to answer that?
Well, I think the thing about Judaism is we don't comment on other religions, really.
We don't believe that they're not true. We just believe that we don't believe in them.
Mm-hmm.
It's true for them. We agree that it's true for them.
But well, if they're all true, how can they all be true? Like there are contradictions in religions. How can they both be true?
True for them and true for them.
So then it's not true.
Yeah, truth needs to be a constant. I think truth needs to be a constant.
Yeah, and this sort of connects to the next question as well. I put the different order, but if you were born in this place, you'd believe in that. Like, just because you were born Jewish, so you say Judaism is true, and if you weren't born Jewish, you'd say whatever the other thing is true. Like, it just depends where you were born, or what you're born into. So is that the only reason that you're a Jew because you're born that way? And if that's the case, then that doesn't make it true. That just makes it an accident of birth. So interestingly, the Jewish response to this would be different to other religions, because we believe that a person is not born by accident. A person is born by divine design. That the family you were born into was chosen by God. You were chosen to be born in this particular family. And so if you were chosen to have a Jewish soul and you're born in a Jewish family, your mission is to be Jewish. That's why you were born that way. And in fact, if you were born in a non-Jewish family with a non-Jewish soul, so we believe your mission is not to be Jewish. It is to be something else. And that's okay. Judaism is the only religion, I'm pretty sure the only one, that will say that not everyone has to be Jewish. And that's the only way to God. And so we don't need to negate other religions to say our religion is true. We actually say there are many paths to God, there are many ways to serve Him, and Judaism is the way for Jews. And if I'm born Jewish, that's my mission, is to be Jewish and to follow the Jewish way. But if I'm not born Jewish, so then that's not my mission. If a non-Jew wants to be Jewish, so then there's an option to convert. That's possible. But
there's no way to opt out of Judaism.
No. If your soul was chosen to be Jewish, that's your mission. So we don't in any way encourage or enforce or try to convert people. That's their choice. But we don't say that we're born into this religion by accident. Our soul was chosen for this particular path. And what's interesting to connect to the next question, if you were born in blank, would you believe in blank? Meaning, if you were born in India, wouldn't it be likely that you'd be a Hindu? Or if you were born in Turkey, wouldn't it be likely that you'd be Islamic? There are hundreds of thousands of options and variants. So is it not just your strong belief in what you are is just because you happen to be born in this particular family, in this particular place, and if you'd be born somewhere else, you would think otherwise. So again, this one, from a Jewish perspective, we actually have a very unique answer to that. Because Jews are born in India and Turkey and Afghanistan and China and anywhere in the world. There are Jews everywhere. And the fact that they were born in that country, surrounded by a majority religion, did not necessarily mean that they joined that religion. On the contrary, Jews have remained faithful to Judaism everywhere in the world. So you could actually look at it that the Jewish people are like a divine experiment. Let's see if truth is really true, then it's true everywhere. And so let's scatter one nation all over the world and see what happens. Will they remain true to a belief, or will they just join the rest? There's no other nation that does not have a homeland for 2,000 years, were homeless and maintained an identity. It doesn't exist. It's not possible, because logically, what makes a Turkish person Turkish is Turkey, the land. And what makes an Indian is the land of India. If there was no country called India, then Indians would cease within a couple of generations. You would have ancestors who were Indian. But just like today, nobody says I'm a Philistine because the land of the Philistines doesn't exist anymore, or I'm an Amorite or a Girgashite or any of these ancient nations. There's no such thing as such a person anymore because there's no land. The land is gone. You don't even say I'm a Roman because the Roman Empire doesn't exist. Italy exists, Rome exists, but not the Roman Empire. So there's no Romans like from the Roman Empire. There are Babylonians and the same thing. So all these nations have disappeared because the country has disappeared, whereas the Jewish people for 2,000 years did not have a land, a homeland, did not have any commonwealth of their own, and yet we're still who we are. And so the fact that Jews have been born in every country and maintained their Judaism is an indication that the truth, the oneness of God is everywhere, and the truth of Judaism applies to all places. So our answer would be, if we'd be born in India, it wouldn't make a difference, or Turkey, or wherever we are. It's not a geographic thing. It's something that's just from our surroundings. Being Jewish is our identity and applies everywhere. So these attacks are not all that strong. Getting a bit stronger is the next one, the third one down. Why is your religion correct? Meaning, once again, there are thousands of different gods and religions to choose from. The majority of them condemn unbelievers, meaning all unbelievers are going to hell. That constitutes every single person except for the one true religion. What makes you think yours is? And what about the people that simply never heard of your religion? Right? So as we know, many other religions would believe that we as Jews, because we don't believe in their religion, are going to be condemned. So, but they each believe that about each other as well, and about us. So what makes us think that ours is more correct than any other? They say there was a king once who got together a Jew, a Christian, and a Muslim leader, a rabbi, a priest, and an imam, and because he was trying to choose a religion. And so this sounds similar to the story of the Khazars, the king of Khazaria, which is a true story. There's a true story of an area in what's now the Soviet Union somewhere, that was the Soviet Union, where there was an area called Khazaria, and the king wanted to choose a religion, and he was choosing between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and he got leaders to write to him to explain their religion. And there's a Jewish book called the Kuzari. Kuzari means the Khazar, the written to the Khazar king, and it was by Rabbi Levi, one of the philosophers of the Middle Ages, where he put the argument for Judaism. And they say that it convinced the king, and he converted to Judaism along with his entire kingdom.
I thought that goes against proselytizing, or...
Well, he wasn't attempting to. He wasn't trying to convert the person, but he was. If a king asks you, present what Judaism is, you know. So the entire nation converted to Judaism, and eventually they were vanquished and everything. But it's believed that they have become part of the Jewish people, and have assimilated amongst us. So that's a true story. But here there's a story that's more of a fable of a king taking a rabbi, a priest, and an imam, and he asked each one of them, "What's the true religion?" And then he would ask them, "What's the second truest religion? What's the second best?" So he first asked the Muslim, "What's the true religion?" He said, "Islam." He said, "What's the second truest?" He said, "Christianity," because Islam believes in Jesus as being a prophet, but that Muhammad took it further. So Islam is first, Christianity is second. So he asked the Christian, "And you, what do you believe? Christianity is the religion. And what's second? Judaism." Because Christianity doesn't accept Islam, but it does accept Judaism, but it came from there. And then they asked the rabbi, "What's the truest religion?" He said, "Judaism." He said, "What's second?" He said, "There's no second." No, there isn't, because what's amazing is that both Christianity and Islam
follow each other,
believe Judaism. They believe Judaism is true. They all agree that the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai and received the Torah. That's a part of Christianity. It's part of their Bible. It's a part of Islam as well. They all believe that the Jewish people were chosen people. They all agree on that. Can you imagine something that Judaism, Islam, and Christianity agree on, completely agree upon? There couldn't be too many things. But one of them is that the Jewish people received the Torah and that Judaism is true. They all agree on that. Just Christianity say that Judaism was added to. There was another installment, another testament. And Islam say that Judaism have corrupted their scriptures. They've got things wrong. So, for example, we say that Abraham brought Isaac up as a sacrifice, or almost brought him up, whereas they say it was Ishmael, it wasn't Isaac, and we've changed the scriptures. Okay, so maybe not, but they do agree that we received the Torah. We had it first.
How does that bolster their argument? If it was Ishmael?
Just that the chosen son, or the heir of Abraham, was Ishmael, their ancestor, not Isaac, our ancestor. That if you read the Torah, so Ishmael...
Then they'd be Jews, no?
Well, no, they're saying that the true descendants of Abraham are the Muslims, through Ishmael.
Because our mother wasn't Jewish.
Yeah, I understand that. But then if they agree that it was the Jews that were at Mount Sinai, Bnei Yisrael, Bnei Yaakov, then...
So they say that they don't deny that we are descendants from Abraham through Isaac, that's true, but the Torah makes it that Isaac was the main son and the main heir of Abraham, and that's where the path went.
But the Bnei Yisrael, Bnei Yaakov anyway.
Yeah, so he said, okay, that happened to Bnei Yaakov, that's their story, and that's true, and they believe that, but they say that we received the Torah, but we didn't we corrupted it. I mean, it's a good question. So then, why didn't the children of Yishmael receive the Torah and not them? Good question. So the fact that all major religions believe in Judaism is quite an amazing thing. So a Christian can't say Judaism is not true. They may say Judaism is not complete, or it's missing something, but they can't say it's not true. And a Muslim can't say that either. So if you ask why is your religion correct, well, everyone agrees it is. Even the Dalai Lama, the leader of Buddhism, has been known to send Jews to study Torah. A lot of Jews end up, going to the Himalayas and searching for spirituality there, and many of them have gone to the Dalai Lama, who's the leader of Tibetan Buddhism, and he said to them, "You're Jewish. Why are you coming to me? You have the Torah. What do you need to come to me for? Go and study Torah." And he sent Jews to study Torah, which means that even the great Buddhist leader is saying that Torah is a source of divine. I mean, so something that all these religions agree upon. I don't think you can find any other example of that. So that itself should be a pretty good argument for saying why I'm confident that mine's correct. But at the same time, we don't say that those who don't believe in Judaism are going to be condemned to eternal damnation and going to hell. We actually don't believe that. You don't have to be Jewish or believe in Judaism. We do believe that there's a basic morality that is biblical morality that all mankind has to adhere to, which are the 7 mitzvahs of the children of Noah, and that applies to all mankind. But that's not Judaism. That's biblical morality. So that's why we can feel quite comfortable with our belief without worrying about that. Then number 4 is what makes your evidence so compelling? Meaning, why do so many people of different religions claim to have personal experiences in relation to their gods? And why are they false and yours not? What makes yours right? Why do you believe in your God other than in indoctrination as a child? Every religion claims that God has said a message and that is their religion. So why is yours better than anyone else's? Yeah? They say God spoke to them, you say God spoke to you. So why is yours true and theirs not?
Well, there's one God, and I don't think that we necessarily believe that he doesn't speak to non-Jews. So, the fact that Bilam,
yeah.
So the fact that we believe there is one God can speak to everybody.
Okay, but does he say contradictory messages to everybody? He tells one person this is the truth, one person that's the truth. If it's one God. So, well, one question is, hang on a minute. Who else has God spoken to? Other than revealing the Torah, who else has God spoken to? Not from our sources, from other sources.
Muhammad?
It was in a dream.
Oh, so did God speak to Muhammad?
No,
That was a dream, no?
Muhammad said it was a dream.
Right, and who spoke to him?
He said God spoke to him. He said a messenger from God came to him in a dream.
So interestingly, we have this image that like God told the Torah to Moses and to the Jewish people, and he told the New Testament to the Christians and the Quran to the... No. According to Islam, the Quran was dictated to Muhammad by an angel.
Gabriel.
An angel Gabriel. Not God. That's their claim. The New Testament was not dictated by anybody. It was just written down by his students after he died. It's not God-given at all.
But did God come to Jesus to speak to Jim?
Maybe not. But there's no scripture of that. There's no
documentation.
There's no God told him to write this or to tell the people that So what our Torah is full of, Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Lemer, and God spoke to Moses to tell the people. No one else has that, and certainly no religion before that has such a thing. we also think that a religion means what God tells people to do. That was not at all what ancient religion was. In religions before the Torah, in pagan religions, the gods didn't tell people what to do. The gods had no interest in what people did. There was no concept of a commandment, of God telling you to do something. In fact, it's such a weird idea if you think about it, that God should tell you what to do. Like, why? Why should he be instructing you on your life? Like, what does he care?
What was there ever before? Before 5,000 years, there was all these things. Millions of years ago, there's traces of like dinosaurs and all these things, What about those humans? Wasn't there Jewish people
They
there?
don't believe in millions of years ago.
No. If in pre-Judaism, before Abraham, there was religion. There was idolatry.
Yeah.
People worshipped idols and had their beliefs, but there was no idol that told you how to live your life. They didn't even believe that the gods were like interested in the world or in your life. They tried to bribe the gods through sacrifices and gifts and these type of things that the rains should come and that they should be looked after. But there was no concept that a god would tell a person how they should live their life. That was a complete innovation.
So what went on before the Lucas?
What do you mean? For the Jewish people?
Yeah.
There was prophecy, but I'm talking about religions. But religions before Judaism, there was no command. Lech lecha was the first thing that God told a person, told Avraham to leave his home but no one would have expected that. After Judaism, religions are about God telling people what to do. All religions that came after Judaism, but before that, no one would have expected such a thing. God cares about our actions, cares what we eat, how we live our life, like our private affairs. God is this big being. Why would he care about the individual, little details? Which, by the way, is one of the arguments of Richard Dawkins, who's sort of the high priest of atheism now, that he says that it's quite arrogant for human beings to think that God cares about our actions and that we could affect him. That God, the creator of heaven and earth,
Is Richard
should be
Dawkins
bothered.
that guy that had a thing with Rabbi?
It was a different guy.
Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah, that was a different one. So he says it's arrogant for people to assume that God should care about our actions and be affected by our actions and it should matter to him. Why should our little puny lives make a difference to an infinite God? So a response to that would be, hang on a minute, isn't it arrogant to say that you know what God cares about?
Uh-huh.
Isn't that arrogant? Like you're saying what God should and shouldn't care about? How would you, puny human being, know what God cares about? Like, if people are so minuscule and minor and insignificant, so then surely we don't know what God thinks, unless he tells us. And so if he tells us, it matters to me what you eat for breakfast, so then it does, because he told us. But for you to say, how could it? How can you assume knowledge of God? That doesn't make any sense. That's arrogance, if anything. So the first answer to this, as far as why is our evidence compelling, is the fact that no other religion actually claims that God spoke to them. That's point number one, whereas we do. But the other point is, no other religion has anything more than an individual revelation, where God or an angel or whatever spoke to a particular individual. No one says the claim that God spoke to an entire nation. That's only Judaism. And this point, it's important to get it clear because it's a very powerful one. That our belief is that the entire nation, men, women and children, stood at Mount Sinai and heard God's voice. Everyone heard it and everyone saw Moses go up the mountain and come down with the 10 Commandments. That was a witness, an eyewitness account that everybody experienced. That is not claimed by anybody. No other religion has even such a claim. Why? Why don't other religions have it? Because you can't make up such a claim. It's not possible. To say that God spoke to me, I could make such a claim. I could come to you today and say, God spoke to me last night and said that from now on, we should only wear pink pajamas. It's a new commandment that came from God, and He spoke to me specifically and told me that. So you have the choice to either believe me or not. And believe me, there would be some people who would believe me. Like, there are enough people out there that could believe anything and are looking for anything. So if I convince them that God spoke to me, some people might be convinced. How many people will be convinced? Maybe 1,000, maybe thousands. If I'm convincing enough, if I'm charismatic enough, if I give, some incentive, and it becomes a bit of a fad to wear pink pajamas because that's what God told me to do. So you can convince people of anything, that's for sure. But you can't convince them that God spoke to them. That would not be so easy. To say God spoke to me, maybe not. To say God spoke to you, how can I convince you that God spoke to you? That wouldn't be so easy. I could convince some people. I think probably there are some people who...
that he talked to your ancestors, because today we don't...
Oh, so then could I convince you that God spoke to your ancestors? So wouldn't you say, if I came to you and said, God told your great-great-grandfather to wear pink pajamas only and nothing else. So wouldn't you say, well, hang on a minute, I've never noticed pink pajamas in my family, and I wouldn't we have some tradition of this? Like, wouldn't we know this already? If it was in my family, wouldn't I know it? How can you tell me what's in my family?
So you're saying our traditions are a proof of that national revelation, because otherwise, why would we all still do these things?
The fact that we're doing it, and at what point in history could it be introduced to us? Who could come at any point in Jewish history and say, your grandparents received this revelation to do these things, and here's the book that tells the story that is supposed to be handed down from generation to generation, but you've never heard of it before?
Okay, but I think there's maybe a devil's advocate argument to that, because since then you've got certain sects in Judaism that wear a shtreimel, other sects that wear a kapota.
But none of them say that at Mount Sinai they did this.
Right.
No one's saying that everyone had to do this and this was always done. That everyone recognises there are different customs and everything, but the core beliefs are all exactly the same.
Yeah.
And so there have been Jewish communities who've been separated for 2,000 years. Like, for example, the Yemenites, who were totally isolated from the rest of Judaism for since the times of the Second Temple or before. And they have the same Torah, keep the same traditions, and do everything the same as the rest of us. Why? Because it's the same story. We tell the same story to our kids. So, to say that was introduced at any point makes no sense. How could somebody come today and say, oh, there's another mitzvah that was also given at Mount Sinai to the entire people. It was never written down, but it was handed down orally. There's another mitzvah of wearing pink pajamas. So anyone will say, well, if that happened, we'd all know about it. Like, that would have been the tradition handed down. You can't tell us that happened to our grandparents.
And there's no listed or documented group of people at the time that sort of denied any of this? Like, there's no group of Jews that would say, no, this didn't happen.
No.
Not one.
No. So that itself is not a small proof. It's a big deal, because what it means is to believe in another religion means taking a leap of faith, believing that God spoke to this guy, and you just have to take it on face value. Like, this is what he said, and you have to accept it. To believe in Judaism is not a leap of faith. It's a logical thing. In fact, to not believe in it, you're going to have to come up with a very strong argument. How did an entire nation have this revelation, and can all tell this same story to their children, but it wasn't true? Could you have an entire nation lying to their kids, making it up? Did somebody get together and say, okay guys, this is the story we're going to tell our kids. Everyone please agree on it. Jews don't agree on anything. We're not going to get a whole nation to agree on a lie. It's not possible. It's like saying that 40,000 people watched a football match and it resulted one way, but the authorities, the Football Association, wanted it to go the other way. So they made an announcement, ladies and gentlemen, we know that Team A won, but we want Team B to win. So please, when you go home, when you talk about this game, Team B won. Please change history. This is how it happened. Let's say they tried to do that. It was very important to do this. So some people might go along with it, but would everyone? Would 40,000 people tell the same story? Would they all agree? They all saw their own lives the other way. This team won, so they're going to start saying the other team won. So it's not possible. And to try and convince them, okay, you saw them win, but they didn't really win. You thought they won, but they didn't really win. You're going to convince them? To make up a story, it wouldn't work. To convince them they saw something that they didn't see, it's not possible. You can convince one individual, 10, a dozen. You can't convince thousands. So it means that our belief is not belief. Our belief is testimony. It's eyewitness testimony. So that's pretty compelling. It is, and it's an unassailable argument. There's no way to disprove that one or to argue against it. That makes sense. And then finally, I played around with this one.
Just one question.
Yeah.
Someone, I heard that question before, but I don't remember the answer. But in the Egyptian world, if you think there's Jews in the Egyptian, in their they also keep a lot of track of what happened, and they're saying that in there they don't have any records from Jews being slaves in Egypt.
Okay. So the Egyptians don't have any record of Jews being slaves in Egypt. So
They have records from very.
They have a lot of records.
3,000 years ago, or even more.
So first of all, there is a record of Israel, but generally speaking, in the ancient world, Egypt included, they did not record their failings, their defeats. They recorded their victories and their strengths. And so many nations are like that even till today, but certainly in the ancient world, they only wrote about what was great. They're not going to write about their defeats. So it's not so surprising that they didn't write about these things or wasn't recorded. But there is a mention of Israel in the hieroglyphics, and in Egypt there is definitely mention of that concept. But yeah, that's the end of that. So finally, I changed this because this was a question against Christianity, but I made it into a question about Judaism. Why are there so many denominations in most religions? So for Jews, Ashkenazim and Sephardim, Hasidim and Mesnagdim, Hillel and Shammai, all interpreting the Bible differently and with different laws and teachings. Which one is right, and why there's so many of them that are contradictory? So this is a much stronger question in Christianity. In Christianity, there are 38,000 denominations of Christianity.
38,000.
Yeah.
And also different Bibles. Apparently, their Bibles differ.
Some have, and they have very different beliefs, and some of them are really contradictory. So it's a much stronger question in Christianity. But for Judaism, we also have, and here I'm only including Orthodox, those who believe in the Torah, but interpret it differently, understand it differently, live differently. So how do you explain that, and which one is right? So first of all, the differences between these groups are actually quite minimal. Even Ashkenazim and Sephardim, which we say are such different worlds, and somebody who's used to Ashkenazi goes to a Sephardi shul, or a Sephardi goes to Ashkenazi shul, and say, what's going on here? This is so different, It's so different. What's so different? Between Ashkenazi and Sephardi shul, what's so different? The accent is different, the tunes are different, some of the prayers are different, most of them are actually the same. Some of the wording is slightly different, but most of it is exactly the same. The Torah that's read is the same Torah, it's the same parasha. The core beliefs and the core practices are exactly the same.
Isn't there one difference between some groups in the Torah?
There's a letter Aleph or a Hey in two different Torahs, yeah. So to say that they're different, like different worlds, it's not true. The core beliefs are exactly the same. In fact, a Jew from anywhere in the world, from any time in history, who would travel in time and space. So let's say you took a Jew from Babylon 2,000 years ago, and they traveled ahead 1,000 years, and they ended up in Hungary in 1,000 years ago. So definitely, like the Jews would be speaking a different language. He was speaking Aramaic, and now they're speaking Yiddish or Hungarian, and the pronunciation of the Hebrew would be slightly different, but he would be able to sit in a Talmud class and hear very familiar discussions of the exact things that he discussed. He'll be able to sit at a Shabbos table and hear the same Kiddush and the same prayers and everything that he was familiar with. He would be able to go to shul and hear the Torah reading. Everything would be very familiar. There'd be certain externalities that were quite different, but from Babylon to Hungary, and the same anywhere in the world, going from Algeria to Poland, or wherever you would go, any time in history, you could pick up the conversation. You could understand what was going on. And the variations are actually very slight. So to say that they're contradictory, or it's actually not true.
What about reform? Is that a denomination?
So
In
if you
fact,
talk,
that's a good argument against reform. How the fact that a Jew from 2,000 years ago could be fast forwarded here, and very little have changed.
correct. So once you're talking about movements, and there have been movements throughout Jewish history that have tampered with Judaism. They have deliberately said that that's what Judaism has been, but we are changing it. Okay, so that's already a different thing. That doesn't apply. But that's all.
And that's what we think about Christianity, that it was like a Jew that
In the beginning, Christianity was a Jewish sect
that's been
that started to tamper with certain beliefs, and they, like the way of all of those groups, eventually separated off and became something else, or they disappeared. All those groups either separated or just fizzled out and disappeared, didn't have a continuation. So I think we sometimes over emphasize the differences between different communities. Chassidim and Misnagdim is the same thing. You know, the Chassidic way of life and the opponents to Chassidim, they look the same to most people. They would be the same things. Philosophically, there are definitely differences. There are different emphases, but it's the same Torah, and it's the same beliefs and the same basic practices, just different emphasis. Even Hillel and Shammai, who argued on points of Jewish law, but that was a part of Judaism. A part of Judaism was that there are areas that are clear cut, and there are areas that are open for debate. And God wanted it that way, so there's human participation in the Torah process. But the fact they disagreed, it's known that Hillel and Shammai and their students would marry amongst each other, and were friendly with each other and respected each other. They were one nation. So I think we overemphasize sometimes the differences, but actually have a lot in common. But even if you would say, well, what about there are so many ways of serving God, so many different ways of serving God. If there's only one God, so shouldn't there just be one path? So I once heard the chief rabbi said that there was a discussion about the word pants. The word pants in grammatically, is the word pants singular or plural? Because what does pants mean? Is pants many, or you don't say pantses? You say two pants, but it's a pair of pants. So it's two, but you're only wearing one. So is pants singular or plural?
plural, because there's one for each leg.
But it's one pair.
But then what is it? One pant?
It's like socks.
So the answer
It's one
is
sock.
You don't have
the real answer to the question is that it's both. That it's singular at the top and plural at the bottom. At the top you put on one pair of pants, but at the bottom there's two legs. So it's singular at the top, but it's plural at the bottom. So the chief rabbi once said the same applies with God. There's only one God at the top, but it's plural down the bottom. There are many different ways of serving Him, and there doesn't have to be only one religion. There's only one God, but how He is served doesn't have to be only one way. There's a way for Jews and there's a way for others, and it doesn't have to be the only one way. And because we believe that, and I've always believed that, so we've always had room for other beliefs. And there's never a danger that Judaism would lead to some type of theocracy that would oppress other beliefs. No, there's Judaism for Jews and there's others for others, and we can be at peace with that. And if only the rest of the world would feel that way, so then a lot of our problems would be solved. All right.